I don't know. Drugs are out, sex is out, politics are out. Everything is on hold. I mean, we definitely need something new. Just keep waiting for some new voice to come out of somewhere and just say, hey. On to business. I got my wild cherry Diet Pepsi, and I got my blackjack gum here, and I got that feeling. Yeah, that familiar feeling that something rank is going down out there.
To the town of our Frio rode a stranger one fine day. Hardly spoke to folks around him, didn't have too much to say. No one dared to ask his business, no one dared to make a slip. The stranger there among them had a big iron on his hip, big iron on his hip. It was early in the morning when he rode into the town. He came riding from the south side, slowly looking all around. He's an outlaw, loose and running, came the whisper from each lip, and he's here to do some business with a big iron on his hip, big iron on his hip. In this town there lived an outlaw by the name of Texas Red. Many men had tried to take him, and that many men were dead. He was vicious and a killer, though a youth of 24, and the notches on his pistol numbered 1 in 19 more, 1 in 19 more.
And if you It's a Friday once again.
How can you close me up? On what ground?
I'm shocked to find that gambling is going on in here.
You're winning, sir.
Oh, thank you very much. Everybody out at once.
There was an era, a territory of time, when the horizon was not yet lined with telegraph cables, when the great expanse of sun-struck sky seemed to speak with the mystery of scripture and echo with thunder. A time when a man was measured not by the weight of his wallet, but by the width of his will, and the wind bore silent witness. This was the American West. Sure, it was expanded in grandeur, danger, and greatness by film, but every day that passes forces the memory of what it was to go dimmer. It doesn't haunt children's wonder like it did before. Despite this fading memory, though the plains have been paved, cattle rails and trails have changed over into superhighways, and the campfire's warm glow replaced with the cold blue haze of the screen, the promise remains. A promise that will remain always relevant, even as it fades with the dissolution of the monoculture that once existed, not only because of the thread that it wove into the American tapestry, but also because some refuse to let it slip away, such as our special guest this evening, Phil Diaz. Welcome to the Gutter. Everyone ends up here eventually. It is only a matter of time. I think this is now your third appearance on this disaster of a show.
I think so. Yeah, thank you for having me, Aldous. Appreciate it.
Absolutely, man. Great to have you here. We're going to be talking about your The Man with No Strings tonight. You're funding issue 1 right now. Issue 0 was funded and delivered on the date you said it. So congratulations for that.
Ooh, yes.
It's always nice to see somebody actually capable of fulfilling a book. And so let's so if you go over to Zaid Comics, the link is both in the chat, thanks to Snuggie, and in the description of this video if you're watching us over on YouTube. But let's talk a little bit right now, real quick, about Man with No Strings issue 1. You are fully funded. You've got roughly 20 days left in this campaign. Are you planning on shipping just like the last one as soon as the campaign's done?
Yes, I'm hoping to actually have actually print before the end of this. I think it's ending on April 10th, and I want to start shipping I would love to ship that day or the day before, so try to gauge it so people actually get their books as soon as possible. This one is fully done right now, fully lettered, ready to print. So we're gonna try to do it again.
Awesome, man. Awesome. Let's turn to the chat real quick and greet some of the fine folks that have joined us this evening. I use fine in the loosest term possible because I've got Citizen Ronan in the chat quoting Tuco from The Good, the Bad, and the Ugly. Citizen Ronan also I believe he is part of our secret fan club of diehard Western fans. And Snuggie Jr. Emerging from his Lent-defined exile. Great to see you, Snugs. We miss your shit posting. You have missed so many glorious opportunities in the last few weeks. What else we got here? Yeah, Citizen Run points out he's got 2 more weeks before Snuggie can come back to his shit posting chair. Kayla has joined us. She says, here and not queer. But we all question that because she lives in Massachusetts.
Yeah, that's right.
Willingly, we might add. Willingly. Snuggie Jr. says he had a monoculture once. He got off school for a couple weeks. That's the wit we miss, Snuggie. The wit we miss. And Citizen Ronan throws some shade at Phil with nothing says the Old West like Chicago.
Hey, I got my Western shirt on right now.
There you go. And Kayla says, Phil always ships fast. And Snuggie says, yeah, my old lady calls me Phil because I'm so fast. So there you go. You're getting some shade already. That just means they love you. Just trust me on that one. Don't question it too much. I don't have to talk about the creators on this because, well, you're here. But I do real quick. We're going to throw up the cover here. This is one of the covers for issue 0. Talk to me a little bit about your artist for this. You picked Oliver, and I'm curious, was there a process behind this? Did you spot something in his work that sang to you? What was it that drew you to associate this with Ollie?
Yeah, Oliver, I've seen his work online for a while, and I think the thing that really pulled me to him is I saw a piece he did, and the guy in the piece of art actually was holding a cowboy gun, like a Colt
A cowboy gun.
Yeah, yeah.
You're making me regret some of the things I said earlier,
He
praising you
was
for your
holding a
appreciation of the Western.
peacemaker
Okay, there we go.
and Colt Peacemaker, and it looked great. It didn't look like it was a 3D asset, and it looked like the guy was holding it, and that must have subconsciously stuck with me. I loved his character work and his faces and how he draws the human form and the anatomy. So I hit him up to originally do concept art for this idea that I've had for a really long time for the story and for the character. And if you guys have issue 0, that concept art is in the back of issue 0. And once he visualized the character that I had in my head for so long, I'm like, I have this short story. Let's get started on it. Are you free to do this? Because seeing that conceptualized on paper just lit even bigger fire under me to pursue this.
Great. So I got some questions about your 2 covers here because you've got this cover and then the secondary cover,
Yes.
which this was offered in black and white as well, if I recall correctly.
Yep.
But you've got 2 totally different styles. I would argue this is a very 90s inspired cover, probably more from the mid 90s or anything else. And then you've got this, which is almost kind of a throwback. I mean, you've got the 90s stylized art, but with the trade dress that you've put on it, it harkens back there to that the end of the Bronze, beginning of the Copper Age, and you're kind of sending mixed messages to me here. So I'm curious as to why you chose to have so diametrically opposed styles here with these 2.
Well, I think this story in a whole, and I think you'd agree, especially pairing with Oliver's art, it has that kind of straddling 2 areas because the story is so spaghetti western, and but the art is very like Sylvester 90s, and it's that contrast is something that I enjoy seeing because I haven't seen it done anywhere else. Like like what I'm trying to do is give like a older school early 80s type of story, but with that in your face art that Oliver is providing. And for this, the retro cover really came about when we figured out we could do print on newsprint.
Okay.
And so that, this piece was already done for a while. And when we understood we were printing this stuff ourselves and we tested printing on newsprint and we were able to do that, I wanted something that would convey this is the retro version. So we harkened back to those old, Jonah Hex early issues or like
Oh,
Weird
we'll be
Western
talking
Tales.
about Jonah Hex later for sure.
For sure, yeah. And so I looked at that, saw the trade dressing of those old issues, and I'm like, oh, we should do that. I think that would be really cool. And now with the throwback coloring that Doug Smith is doing on these retro covers, it's going to be like an ongoing thing that we do for those newsprint editions.
Gotcha. So who laid out the trade dress on the older style? Was this you, or was this an artist? Was this an editor? Who did you have do this, if you don't mind me asking?
I laid it out, and I had Alan Alonso do the throwback bullet logo for the Zaid Comics like back of the cartridge. Otherwise than that, yeah, I did the trade dressing.
Gotcha. So with that, because you're a youngin, Phil, as far as I'm
Mhm.
concerned, I would not assume that you would be that inspired by the old Jonah Hex stuff.
Hmm.
But time and time again, in flipping through issue 1, I do see some moments where there is inspiration on it. But my biggest question for you here is you're doing something on your cover that is a little wild if you're being inspired by that, and that's you're breaking the trade dress line by his hand as he's
Yeah,
coming
yeah.
up past it.
Yeah.
You do this a little bit throughout the course of the book too. Is this more of the artist that's doing that, or is that something that you strive for of kind of breaking that plane?
I love that. I do that in my lettering as well. Like any time that I could put something behind a figure that creates another plane and dimension to the art, it tickles me. And so when I laid this image under the trade dressing, I saw that his hand, there's an opportunity to kind of make another plane in the whole medium of the art, the whole cover. Um, I took that opportunity to kind of push that hand forward. So yeah, that was me with that because if you look in the back of the book, um, this art on this cover goes all the way to the top. You know, it
Yes.
originally was made to be a full cover. So it's because at the time we didn't think we were going to do this style of dressing, but it worked out. So we were able to cut a little bit off and still leave that popping forward.
I can assure you that Phil is a lot younger than me. But he is an old soul. We do share the number of the number of interests that cross over is amazing for a gentleman as young as Phil. But so yeah, man, I love the cover. I'm not too keen on this, but we've already been over that. But I've got so I open up the book, I get it, I look at these two great options of covers. I take a look at your front matter, and I
Mhm.
have questions.
Yeah.
Where's this in the front matter?
Where's what?
It's
What do you
there's
mean?
no dynamic. There's nothing. It's just there. Like I guess I expected if I'm seeing this cover, right,
Mhm.
or this cover, like I expect to open it up because I mean this cover especially, and your point is valid. It does scream Silvestri. That
Mhm.
influence is very readily available. This looks like a book that you would find today from the mid 90s or maybe later 90s with a Top Cow logo on it, right?
Yeah, yeah.
It's got all of that, but when I open it up, I don't have that wow. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? Like it's just I get what you're going for. You're bridging the gap. What you gave me is you give me a mid 90s really inspired cover or a nice throwback to the Jonah Hex Bronze Age, Copper Age, Dynasty end beginning.
Mhm.
But then I get just a muted 60s front matter.
What are you looking for?
I don't know. I don't know. I just but you've really impressed me with this, and then this was
Mhm.
just kind of like a oh,
Yeah, just
okay.
title page.
Well,
I'm open to suggestions though.
I think there's some options for improvement here just to make it a little bit more exciting because you do a really good job of entering into the story right
Mhm.
away. And my next question, which you've already answered, was you did all the lettering on this.
Yes.
All right. So your lettering choices, you do two things that I find interesting.
Mhm.
One, you've alternated your dialogue. So you've got square bubbles in some pages and round
Mhm.
bubbles in some pages, and then you intersperse them, and then you're over texting or over layering your narration on top of that. What you've got like two schools of thought going on here that you normally don't see blended, and I'm curious as to where that source is from.
So you're talking about like how uh the more rectangle balloons for when he's yelling help and stuff like that?
Yeah.
Right. Yeah, that's I'm just trying to do a more textured balloon to convey the intensity of and weight of what the character is saying.
Okay.
Those are like hand drawn out rectangles. And then most everything else in conversationally is a rounded balloon. And I believe I do that again with the rectangles when Ragnatelli shows up, um, to give, yeah, more character to the words that are being said.
Okay. So before before I start flipping through too many pages, I do want to. I mean, this issue zero's out, so we can kind of. I'm going to talk a little bit about what's going on in the plot because you've done something here that is very Jonah Hex. You're taking that Western location, that Western style, and you're merging it in this case with what I would argue is folklore.
Hmm.
And you're playing with that in a very interesting way. And so I got to ask, do you see the Western as a kind of American fairy tale or folklore? And
Oh.
are you trying to reinforce that connection, or is that something that just was a happy coincidence?
No, yeah, that was on purpose. I mean, yeah, the Western is ultimately one of the quintessential American myths, right? And it starts as reality, and then as time goes on, it just becomes more mythical. You know, the paperbacks of the early 1900s just booming about all the myths of the West, and then at the same time, the kind of like fairy tale aspect we're dealing with that was thought up and written during the height of the Wild West, you know? So kind of meshing those two ideas. And then also, you have the spaghetti Western, which is inherently Italian, and then the fairy tale that we're twisting it into is Italian as well.
So, which brings me to my next question. Here on page 2, on panel 4, you show the hands holding the mask.
Mhm.
And is this an intent? Like, are you playing with the metaphor for commedia, the Harlequin theater of the Italian early Italian Renaissance, or is again this just a happy coincidence?
That's a coincidence. It's like ahead of these puppets that our villain is putting together and controlling. And
I ask
yeah,
because oftentimes JP and I find ourselves over analyzing these books,
sure.
and I always kind of try to check myself and go, the Groucho Marx, sometimes a cigar is just a cigar.
Yeah, yeah.
So since I've got you here and we're going to go through this, I wanted to clarify because I always find that interesting when you get too deep in the weeds and you start reading
Mhm.
too much into it. Because yes, you obviously have the Italian Western and the Jonah Hex influence with the blending of two things. In this case, instead of kind of a sci-fi, you're using folklore and myth with that Western overlay. But does that take away from the Western itself at all? Or how did you dance that delicate line in writing the story? What was your impetus behind trying, like, what was the goal there?
Well, I think westerns is just as a genre is such a rich field playground. So I'm trying to keep these stories, if you as if you could strip away all the fantastic elements of them, and I'm trying to make them still work as westerns. If there was no magic in the story, if our character didn't have this curse, and if these bad guys weren't imbued with dark powers, the stories in my mind should still work as like a spaghetti western story. A lone gunman traveling around fixing problems. He might not like that he has to do it, but he's has that moral stance. Um, so I'm trying to keep that through the whole series. I still want it to be as much as a western as it is, as much as like a weird western, as much it has these fantastical elements to them.
All right, so going back to the writing style, I've got
Mhm,
you did something here that I'm intrigued by because it's
mhm,
the only time in the book that you did it. And if we go down into the detail, like I had just shown, this is the bottom right corner. So it's panels 5, 6, and 7. If
mhm.
we look at the detail of those, you've done two things here that I'm curious. One, where you got this, or if this is just something you've picked up in reading, and the second is your editor's note.
Mhm.
The first is that your bubble of "Let Me Down" follows precisely the eyeline guide that we always talk about here on the show. So it's rare we get a chance to talk to a creator, mainly because JP and I are just antisocial and we don't like talking to people. But you're following the arc, the eyeline guide. So I'm curious on your lettering, like where did you pick that up? And then the follow up is why did you decide to use a single Italian line and then define it when you don't really do that anywhere else?
Well, when when you see Ragnatelli later in the story, I have him say things, and you do that again. Just I don't know if I reiterate that it's from Italian, but I know in his grand entrance, there's editor notes on there
Okay,
later on.
I stand corrected.
All right, good. I didn't think if I forgot, but yeah, I tried to do that, and that was kind of a point of contention for myself, and I asked some people like some of these words are yeah, they're Italian, but like if he says "signor," everybody knows what "signor" is. But do I put that in there as an editor's note? Like, should I? Is it treating my reader like I think they're dumb by translating it to them, or should I just not translate it? So that like this was kind of like the real first time I ever had to deal with editor's notes like that. I think maybe in the Lost Pages I did with El Dorado when he was speaking Spanish. So I did, waver a little bit back and forth on should I or should I not. But for the lettering question you had, I think that's just from me reading so many comics and picking up, and it's kind of like the feeling you get, like where does your eye naturally fall? So I always try to give like a rhythm or that S or Z curve on a page when lettering. And I think it helps it helps me that I letter my own books because I could edit during the lettering phase. I could cut dialogue. If it's not working, I write my scripts with dialogue when the artists get them. And so they hopefully know how much narration or dialogue that I'm going to be putting into each panel. Sometimes I cut it out if they don't leave enough room for it, or you find ways to make it fit. But the most important thing is for it to be pleasing to the eye and not to confuse. So that's what I'm always trying to think of when I'm lettering.
All right, so kind of moving through the book a little bit, and
Mhm.
you do this frequently in the book, and I'm curious if this is your direction or if this is just Oliver doing his thing.
Mhm.
You tend to use a primary focal panel
Mhm.
instead of any kind of a grid. So, but you've referenced in the past that obviously you're inspired by some of the older stuff, but you're all of the art obviously drifts, like we said, to more of that top cow '90s, mid to late '90s format.
Yeah.
Is this something that you directed more with your scripting, or is this just the artist doing his own thing and you working around it because it works?
It is kind of like what would you call it? Just like I know that Oliver likes to work like this, having an anchor point. So I'll give him an anchor point, and when I think there is a good spot to use grids, I'll put it in the script. And there are some in the issues coming up because I know this is heavily geared towards more of a 90s reading experience with these large anchor shots and inset panels. And I love that. I know Oliver really, that's what he likes to do. So it's kind of like an agreement, like a marriage together of like, okay, this is how this is going to go. When I find opportunities that we could go to a more traditional storytelling aspect, beat by beat, 6, 9 panel grids and stuff like that. Cause I do like utilizing those in the right moments. Yeah, hopefully that answers your question. So it's
Yeah.
because I know that Oliver is more into drawing that stuff, I'm trying to accommodate that.
All right, so we're 4 pages in to issue 0, and now you drop your episode your reveal, your episode
Yeah,
title,
title
however you
page.
wanna you wanna phrase this.
Mhm.
Why did you choose to use the 4th page? And then why did you choose to make it a splash?
So, um, I
Or
wanted to
again,
set
is
up.
this just the artist?
No. Yeah. So I wanted to set up kind of like a preface to what's going on. And if you guys read this, you know that the man's son gets kidnapped. He goes to try to find help. No one in the town will help him except for this guy. And this whole intro is now we're learning about our lone gunman. And he's talking about his father and the stuff he's learned from his father. So I just wanted a build up to the moment where we fully see him realized. I'm a sucker for that, that internal monologue, telling the reader or a little bit about himself that builds to a splash moment. And I'm a sucker for it. So I think that is, if I remember correctly, page 4 is going to be a reoccurring page that is our title page throughout
Okay.
throughout the next few issues.
So you're kinda gonna you're making that the calling card essentially of the series.
Yeah, and it's always on a page turn. We'll have.
So you're always gonna be doing a prologue and then introduce.
Mhm.
Is
Yeah.
there any particular place that came from, or just do you like, is that something you've seen in comics that really resonate with you, or is that just something you find works with your writing style that coincides with the artists you work with? What or did you are you making that just your calling card?
I mean, I love the page turn, utilizing it, and I haven't had a chance to write this style because my previous stuff they've all been like graphic novels, like volumes of work
Mhm.
that are 60-page plus put out at once. So now that we're able to print this, distribute it ourselves, and put it out more readily, I could write in a way that's geared more towards a monthly, you know, or what would be the monthly mainstream style. So I could have fun titles for each issue. And that's something I really wanted to do with this. I don't know if I picked it up anywhere. I know that, old school Jack Kirby stuff opened with splashes. So I've seen many different ways of, doing your title pages. Um, but I've just fallen in love with this now that I'm writing it so readily.
Well, I think the interest and the passion comes across. The story's, it's got a great pacing. I
Thank
think
you.
you do tend to get a little dialogue heavy at times, just with,
Mhm.
as JP always phrases it, just wording. Like you can cut things down, but I think that's true for almost everybody. And especially, it's always easier to look secondhand at something. Um, one of my questions with this was, in a classic Western, you have your white hat and your black hat.
Mhm.
And there's always a cost that has to be paid for both the white hat and the black hat. Is that, or at least that cost would be suggested, at least in the ending? I mean, thinking back to Shane, is Shane riding off into the sunset as a representation of the West, and is he dying, or is he just riding on to the next town? Is that something that you tried to put into this, or is that something that you're allowing the reader to interpret from more of the story element?
Yeah, I'm hoping that it got across to the reader that he has this, built-in, curse that is the cost of him going down the path of revenge. That's kind of the whole theme of this series is how much of himself is he going to lose to get his payback? And that's going to be explored throughout the whole series. So in that aspect, yeah, there's definitely that cost. And, I'm super excited to show what happened in the past because, you know, very much inspired by those revenge tales and the gut twisting moments that make you as a reader or viewer recontextualize everything that you have seen until that moment. Um, you know, movies like The Quick and the Dead and Once Upon a Time in the West, like those were big inspirations. Um, but he's definitely not, I would say, a white hat hero. Um,
Well, I guess
more.
how do you separate that? Because in your classic western, right? I mean, if you look at the delineation between, and this is a tired argument for anybody that listens to me on the regular basis, but the classic debate between High Noon and Rio Bravo, right? You've
Mhm.
got one instance the sheriff asking for help, the other instance the sheriff turning away help. It one they're both white hats, but arguably the hat is it's white only in the sense of what role they're playing. It's their morality is gray in both instances,
Mhm.
depending on what your inference is on it. In your case, you kind of lay that a little heavy-handed, as we like to say here on the gutter.
Just a little.
Thanks to Mike, just a little.
Mhm.
But you do lay it out just a little heavy-handed that it's not that clear and that you are leaning definitely into that gray. Do you is that is that something that's going to continue to build throughout the issues, or is that just this character?
No, we're gonna see the different shades going forward because there's lots of side characters that he'll run into
So
that
he's
will.
Paladin, essentially then.
I mean, maybe. But you'll see lighter moments of him. I'm trying to make it so there is an arc and a complexity to the character. He's not this brooding guy that says to hell with everyone. He is that reluctant hero that his morals will break him down to do some right, which we'll see in issue 3.
Gotcha. So, what I guess we're looking at issue 0, but let's talk a little bit about how issue 1 builds on issue 0. What was it that you're looking to expand upon with issue 1 from this issue?
So yeah, so issue 0 was very much setting up the character, letting you guys know what's going on. You guys get let in on the like a peek behind the curtain, and I really was. It was important to us to have 0 not just be the first 16 pages of issue 1. So they're totally separate stories. And in issue 1, we're going to see more of that backstory. And issue 0 ends with him riding off, declaring he's going to go get his father back, and we're actually going to see his father, a glimpse of who he was, and we meet a really nasty gambler that plays with his mind, and gets to see what makes this guy tick, and what our main character actually cares about.
So, looking at this page, and this is the eighth page of issue 0. This kind of goes back to my earlier question with the reference of the grid, a standard grid versus the splash. Here, you're doing the anchor point very low on the page,
Mhm.
but you're following the 1/3, 2/3 rule with balancing that we've talked about really for the last 4 shows here on the
Mhm.
gutter. It's been kind of a reoccurring theme between Steranko's Outland, Archie Goodwin, Alien adaptation, and then the recent Epic Illustrated story that we looked at, also by Archie Goodwin. Is this something that you've kind of vibed from the older stuff? Because I know you're a Steranko fan. So is that something you've kind of picked up and you've talked to your artist about, or again, is this just a happy coincidence?
This one was, I'm pretty sure, all Oliver. And yeah, if you guys haven't seen that stream that Paulus and JP did on Outland, so cool. Like I was taking notes during that episode on layouts, and in fact, one of those Outland layouts inspired. Like I literally took a screenshot and sent it to Oliver for one of the upcoming issues, because that the balance is so awesome on those pages. But yeah, this was, Oliver just hitting a home run on this page.
Yeah, no,
Yeah.
again, man, I apologize. My scans were not great, for that. I can't. I've got some of those issues are really expensive, and I
Oh
can't
yeah, I'm sure.
press them down into the scanner.
Mhm.
But I can, and I'm sorry, I haven't. I'll zip them all together and email them over to you, brother.
That'd be
Um, that way you got a copy because ever ever since Achios died, that September '81 issue of Heavy Metal is almost impossible to get, and its
yeah.
price is just astronomical now. But you're doing great stuff, and again here's a great example of what we were alluding to earlier, where you're falling into that grid style. And just so I can make my point clear, I'm going to go back up to your title reveal page,
Mhm.
and so you've got layered dialogue, and you're following your layered dialogue exactly as you should structure on this page. But and it's not even a criticism; it's just a suggestion. But looking at that and looking at how the dialogue is structured, and then
Mhm.
looking at page 9, like, do you see how one flows a little bit better than the other? Because page
Yeah,
9
yeah, sure.
flows better with the eye than your
Mhm.
reveal page, and it has nothing to do with your title dress. Like, you can take the title and your credit off. It's just how the flow is. Like,
Mm.
it's 2 linear lines versus if you look at this, it flows with the eye really nice.
Yeah, I see what you're saying.
So that would be my only thing. But and this is a common critique that I have when you're jumping between a grid style versus an anchor image style. You're going to see that. But at the same time, dude, thank you so much for not wasting any space. If you have space, it's
Mm.
colored. It's got depth. It's not sitting in a sea of white across this entire book.
Yeah.
This is how it should be done, whether it's black and white, whether you're choosing to do like a sepia wash or an ink wash, or whether you're going to color, however you're going to color. Like, this is how you do a book. And by the way, I didn't mention it, but back on page 7, I really like the gutter lines here with the inset panels where they're a little
Mm.
rough.
Yeah.
Really nice choice for an action beat. But so we go from this, and again, you're doing that heavy depth. I don't have a ton of white space at the top or bottom. If you do have white space, you're blacking it out. I love that. You're giving the page depth. That's what I like to see. Ink spots will disagree with me all day long. That's that's not the way you do it.
Yeah.
But and then you go to this, and I wanted to talk to you about this in particular because you're doing something that this is, to me, it's beyond an inset. You're doing layer. This is almost what I would call a layered panel,
Yeah.
where you're playing with the image overlaid and how it flows into the bottoms. And it goes back to what we talked about with the title dress. And again, is this in the instance of the story, there's it's almost a little metaphorical, with how everything blends. I'm curious again, is this something that you really worked with the artist on, or is this just Oliver doing his thing?
So I'm pretty sure this was the first time he did this like ornate paneling, curved bottom. It's reflective of the villain being, arachnid inspired and kind of demented into having spider mutations. And I really dug it. And he did the webbing, and I even told him to go back to the previous page and add some of that webbing around that panel where our hero gets tied up initially. Um, and I just really liked, yeah. So that was Oliver going ahead and making this kind of like a moment, because obviously it's the first time you get introduced to this guy initially and seeing his full body.
So that leads into my next question, which is you're you're playing with that folklore, the fairy tale element, and
Mhm.
you're playing with a Western setting, and you're merging the two, but the Western setting's taking the forefront. how are you choosing to balance those fairy tale elements? Because like you said, I mean, if you go back to the trade dress cover for the kind of the older Bronze Age style, you don't see it as much, but you definitely do get it here with that spider web in the background. And
Mhm.
then there's subtle suggestions throughout it with little suggestions of web on some of these pages
Right.
as the story progresses. And it's again, it's a nice touch. I even told you, I think if you go back to when you asked me to edit it, and I'm like, well, this not really my style, man. I'm just going to yell at you about the art. Um,
Yeah.
but that was one of the things I commented on was like, I like the little subtle web elements. They're there and it's great. And it builds through the context of the story. But how are you moving forward with the series? Are you planning on making one? Is each issue going to have one in more forefront of the other, or is it a constant balancing act of keeping it subtle with those fantastical elements, but keeping the Western up front? Or does it matter issue to issue, story to story? Is it on whimsy what the story you want to write is? How does that process work?
It is something that I'm trying to consciously balance so one isn't overtaking the other, because magic isn't rampant in this world, and I don't want it to be. It's kind of it is focused in the area of our hero's life, and he is, it's an ailment to him. Everybody that he goes up against is twisted in some way because of an event that happens that is wrapped in his life. It's his origin is wrapped into that. So it's actually been super fun to flesh out what parts of this world have that, fantastic fairy tale element to it. And it'll be in most every issue, for sure. It's what this story. It's the other half of this story. So, but it's been fun balancing that out and picking and choosing what to embellish.
All right, so a couple of final questions here as we're reaching the end of the issue 0. When you're looking to do all of this, it is how do you balance that out? How do you make sure that you don't make it too fantastic? Are there going to be instances where the man with no strings just comes up against just an average bad guy that's just a bad guy? Or is every character going to be his ilk?
No, there's definitely just regular humans that are he's gonna run into. In fact, yeah, there's sometimes there's just greedy gangs that wants to steal something shiny. These guys are bad guys, but the shiny thing is probably the thing that is the magic. So it's not always going to be a person or a group of people. So those will probably feel a little bit more grounded, but keeping track of this stuff has been um, interesting. It's the first time that I actually made a timeline for a series or a story, like actually writing out, this is the conception of this character. This is how this character became to be. These are the big points in his life. This is going to be a flashback, so on and so forth. Like, actually had to map this stuff out so there is a balance to it and things aren't revealed too early. And it's a constant wrestling match in my head of, oh, what's the next arc, what's that going to be? So
Well, there are a lot of people that would argue that for the most part, everything that could have been done with the Western has already been done. You've seen it constructed, you've seen it deconstructed, you've seen the rags to riches, you've seen the riches to rags, you've seen it all from Unforgiven to Lonesome Dove, from High Noon to Rio Bravo, from Red River to The Quick and the Dead. It's all been done. How do you take something that has been that's such a cultural cornerstone of Americana, and how do you make it your own without falling into the traps of all of the cliches that have been built up over the years?
I don't know how to answer that question. I'm not
That's
sure.
fine.
I
I mean,
think
it's the same question that I would ask anybody that's
sure.
doing a pulp hero, right? I mean, well, you've done the Silhouette, who's
Mhm.
obviously inspired by Bob the Human Xerox Machine, Kane, and Bill Finger's Batman, which was ripped completely off of Walter Gibson's The Shadow,
Right.
to Superman. If you're gonna do cape shit, you're ripping off Doc Savage.
Mhm.
And how do you balance that? How do you make something fresh that the copper has been beaten so thin? How do you keep it lustrous? What is it about, like, is that, I mean, there has to be a reason, Phil, that you chose to write this book.
Yeah.
That's what I'm getting at is, and how do you do that without avoiding, or are you leaning into it? And that's fine too. I'm just curious, like, is that in the forefront of your mind, or do you not worry about it? Is it something you think about constantly? When you're doing a Western, it's a question that has to be asked, because there's a reason the Westerns, like Kevin Costner did a fantastic Western that if it was made in the 70s with New Horizon would have been a huge hit. But
Yeah.
because it's in the modern audience, it wasn't accepted because of its slow pacing and slow
Right.
burn, and it fell into all the old cliches. How do
Yeah,
you how do you balance that?
I th I think I'm approaching it as something brand new, but I do utilize some of those tropes and, like, iconic, um, moments that I'm sure if, you guys know spaghetti westerns, you may have even seen some inspiration in the trailer. I know Citizen Ronan called me out on it in my DMs. Uh, but it's totally there for, as an homage, and something that's been homaged dozens of times. Westerns, there's an endless string of them that reference themselves and other mediums. Uh, so I'm not terribly worried about falling into trope thing because I think the spin on it is gives it something fresh that I could, mold into something new. So uh, the thing that I'm worried about is kind of like hitting these beats that I really want to be something special for the reader. We talked about inspirations. It's not only westerns, but and we've talked about this. You and I. Hillbilly was a huge inspiration for this series. The pacing of it, and the arcs with almost different monsters of the month going forward, but having an overarching um, almost destined story feeling. So uh, there's a lot that I'm trying to pull from, and hopefully, I'm thinking it's going to be something new that people will enjoy.
Well, so when you're citing Hillbilly, which is by Eric Powell, who famously came to notoriety, I would argue, with The Goon more than
Mhm.
anything else. But Hillbilly, I think, is his best work, and I think it does something similar to what you're doing here. Like, arguably, so does The Goon, which is merges two things. I mean, he's merging kind of zombies and, God forsaken, the chat's gonna kill me, but Lovecraftian kind of monsters hidden in the shadow
Yeah.
with the kind of the depression in that era. And then with Hillbilly, he's exposing Appalachian culture similar to the same things, really no different than Mike Mignola did with Hellboy by putting a
Right.
demon in a kind of a historical context and wrapping it up with government mystery a la the X-Files. So I think you're playing with the same concepts there. As you move forward, I've got full faith that you'll do well. You're for your young age, you're very well versed. But the the danger would be to fall into the cliche. And so I would, like I said, man, and I asked the question and he answered that there will be just average people. And I think
Mhm.
that's why early Superman works. That's why Batman works. Is a lot of Batman, the rogues gallery, they're not all super powered. And especially with Batman, it's just mano a mano. It's you kind
Mhm.
of gotta match the wits or you gotta exceed the brute strength. And if you can do one of the two, you can always overcome the villain. And there's a balance there for a hero, and I think you've got it going with so far with what I've seen from issue 0, what I've heard from issue 1. But I do want to praise you a little bit if you can tolerate a little bit of that, because at the end of issue 0, you say issue 1, Dead Man's Hand coming soon. And in 6 months, Phil, 6 months, you're funding issue 1. How long do we have to expect based off the success of issue 1 so far? Per your comments at the beginning of the show that you're doing really well, for issue 2.
Yeah, issue 2 is already fully drawn, and all I have to do is letter it, and what I wanna do is have issue 2 funding this summer, definitely by the end of summer. I have some conventions coming up, and I would love to actually have issue 2 in hand in June at Heroes Con as a special, probably have, like, some cool exclusive cover, maybe have it sold there first, and then when we get back, put the pre-order up. Uh, and as of now, issue 3 is 4 pages complete.
Nice.
Oliver just knocked out the first 4 pages, and um, he's going on to the rest of the issue. So as
Have
long
you
as I can keep writing this stuff, I got to get started on issue 4 writing that. We're going to keep pumping them out.
Well, you did mention that you're gonna go to a couple of cons. You will be at C2E2 this year, and you
Yes.
from what I understand, from off your post, if I read it correctly, and I apologize, it's been a long day, and I saw it earlier in the day, but you will have, issue 1 available at the convention?
Yes, yeah, next weekend is, C2E2. We'll have, issue 1, an exclusive cover will be available there, so if anybody is in the area, and during that time, next weekend, we'll have that cover up for pre-order on the site, and then I think it's like, man, maybe like a week or 2 weeks, and then we start fulfilling.
Nice. Well, I think that's gonna do it for us tonight, man. I really wanna congratulate you, though. If you get again, the link has been dropped in the comments if you're watching us on YouTube. If not, it's, Zaid Comics. It's also in the description of this video if you're watching this in the replay and ignoring the comments. ZaidComics.com, you can check out, The Man with No Strings issue 1. Very, very reasonably priced, and actually, Phil, I gotta talk to you about this because you 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 you've got a printer, you're printing on newsprint. When I backed a copy of issue 0, you sent me a free copy of Magic Cop printed on, which is another one of your books because
Mhm.
this is the only one we've talked about. But you've got a couple other books out there. You're printing stuff on newsprint. You've got a cutter now from our mutual friend,
3D
3D
Zach.
3D Zach,
Yeah.
and man, you're doing it all in house. You're doing your own lettering. You're doing you're doing great, man. Congratulations.
Thank you. Yeah, it's crazy. It's all a learning process. Actually being able to print our own books is so cool. Just to learn another skill and another, operation in the line of creating this stuff. And it feels like, one step closer to absolute indie. Maybe we're already there. I don't know. But learning how to use the cutter and all that. Shout outs to Zach for the cutter, and he gave us a bunch of paper as well, which was super cool. And yeah, it's been great. So I can't wait to get more out.
So my next question is, are you at the point where, and this drifts away from the topic of the night,
Mhm.
but are you at the point where you're going to start being able to print newsprint for other people?
Yeah, yeah, I believe so. We're doing it with our buddy Matt Fowler with his prospectors book. We've had some inquiries from friends and people that are interested in it, and it's totally doable. Yeah, and we'd prefer to do it solely on newsprint, but if other people want, you know, uh, the more regular paper, we could do that too.
Well, I think I'm an old school comic guy, and not to step up on my soapbox too much, but I think newsprint, because of its cost point,
Mhm.
is it's the secret key for indie. Because yeah, you can go to any printer, you can go to Mix'em and get your book printed on glossy paper. but that's only going to increase the price. If you can find somebody that's local, like if somebody's in the greater Midwest area and they're a 2-3 hour drive from you, they can get their book printed. They can come check it out. They can see it. You can print it on newsprint. It's right there. The cost is lower because you don't have to worry about any of that fancy paper. And there's something about newsprint that's still, I think it's almost better than anything else right now because you don't see it so often. So if you ever experienced the old school newsprint comics back in the day, man, it's a new world. And if you haven't seen it, go check out zadecomics.com and grab a copy. They're all very reasonably priced. But again, issue 1 for The Man with No Strings is funding. You've already funded. You're at 20 days away from fulfillment. You've always been good on your fulfillment dates, and for that I congratulate you. And you're doing great work, man. You're helping guys like Maddie Fowler, who's a hell of a creator, but has had a little problem with fulfillment in the past as well. And you're getting stuff that's years late. You're helping them out and getting them up. So congratulations, man.
Thank you. Yeah, thank you so much. Thank you guys for watching, and yeah, definitely check out everything on the site and sign up to our mailing list too if you guys haven't ordered anything from us, to stay up to date with the new stuff coming out.
Awesome, man. Well, thanks again, Phil, for joining us. It's always an absolute pleasure, and I won't be able to make it this year. Like I said, I was hoping to. I blame it all on Mrs. Aldis. But next year, God damn it, Windy City PulpCon, we got to be there.
Yeah.
It's
down the block from me.
Never, ever going to forgive myself for not going the year that you ran into Sterenko. So
yeah, at the Denny's.
Right.
Yeah. Crazy.
But I will be dropping the link in the chat if you want to join us in the back room for some discussion. That is going to be in the chat over on the YouTube. Otherwise, go check out zadecomics.com. The Man with No Strings, issue 0 and issue 1 are both available. Issue 1 is still funding and will be fulfilled in approximately 20 days or so. He's going to start fulfillment. So congratulations again, Phil. Thanks for joining us. And next week, JP will be back. So I apologize in advance.
See you guys.
Take it easy, y'all.
This is blood for blood and by the gallons. This is the old days, man, the bad days, the all or nothing days. They're back. There's no choices left.
You're still here? It's over. Go home.